everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about today. So today, as we end our unit on the Cold War, America tries to make a Death Star, and the Soviet Union just disappears? Let's talk about it. Let's get started. One of the craziest stories in history, to me, is the story of Ronald Reagan and his Strategic Defense Initiative here in the 1980s. I'm going to have to walk you through this one because this one is awesome and crazy. So, in 1980, America gets a president named Ronald Reagan. All right, he's a very popular president. Now, Ronald Reagan was an actor. He did westerns back even in the 1950s, little shoot-em-up westerns. He then became the head of the Screenwriters Guild in California. So he's, associated with movies. He then gets into politics, becomes the governor of California, very popular, becomes the president of the United States, wins in a landslide, very popular president with his conservative policies in the 1980s. So when Ronald Reagan comes up with this idea, it's wild. Ronald Reagan is an idea guy. He's not necessarily a guy who's going to, know how things work, but he can think outside the box. He comes up with this idea. He's like, hey, come here. And he calls it his Strategic Defense Initiative. He's like, what if we put satellites in space? And if Russia ever tried to launch a nuke at us, we can launch a nuke and intercept it and blow it up and then simultaneously launch another nuke in this direction and go back to Russia and blow that up and it's all this really advanced crazy technology. And he's like, let's do it. And he kind of presents it to all of his scientists, and his scientists are like, President Reagan, we respect you and all, and we like your idea. The problem is that this goes against the basic fundamentals of physics. You can't launch missiles from space because it'll push the satellite back. It's not how, there's all these physics things. I myself am not a scientist, so I can't necessarily explain why. There's a whole bunch of physics. It's like an impossibility based on science. You can't do this. He's like, no, but I want it. And they're like, Mr. President Reagan, we can't do it. And he says, well, here's $1 trillion, trillion with a T, to go make it. So all the American scientists, they're like, how much? He said $1 trillion. And they said, well, we'll give it a try. And the American scientists go out and try to build this thing called the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI. All right? Space nukes, pretty much. They know they can't build it, but hey, they got $1 trillion, might as well try. So they're like, okay, well, at least he'll keep this secret so, he doesn't have to, go announce it to the whole world and, everybody knows that, we apparently don't know science. No, Ronald Reagan immediately goes on TV and lets everybody know, so we've got, this, space nukes, all right? And he goes through, he explains to everybody how we have this thing called the Strategic Defense Initiative. He makes it sound like we already have this. This is in the 1980s. So the American public is like, wait, we have a big machine in space that can launch nukes and destroy the world? Wonder where he got that idea from. Since the number one movie in America, the 1980s, is Star Wars, all right? People turn around and they call this the Star Wars program. They're like, Ronald Reagan, are you trying to make a Death Star? Are you trying to make a Death Star, Ronald Reagan? Oh, Ronald Reagan, up to Ronald Reagan things. So Ronald Reagan is extremely well respected in the United States. So instead of being lambasted that he is spending $1 trillion on something that can't actually exist, and it appears he got the idea from a movie, people embrace this. They're like, we now have a Star Wars president. And everybody just calls this entire thing he's spending $1 trillion on the Star Wars program. Making fun of him, but they're like, that's our boy. Again, Ronald Reagan was so popular. People, enjoyed this fact he's spending $1 trillion on something that's not possible. Now, here's the flip side to it. Russia. Russia is like, wait, America's getting a Death Star? So when Russia, the Soviet Union, finds out that America apparently is trying to create a Death Star, they want one themselves. So they grab all their scientists and they bring them together, and they're like, all right, so America's building a Death Star, we need to go build one too. And all the scientists are like, you can't. You can't. It's not true. And they laugh it off at first, but then Russia realizes America is spending $1 trillion on it. Nobody in their right mind would spend $1 trillion on something that doesn't work. America is. But when Russia realizes America is spending $1 trillion on it, but all the scientists in Russia are like, it's not possible. Russia fully believes that they have now lost the scientific advantage. They think America has figured out something that they don't. How in the world could you build this? And we don't think it's even possible. So the scientists in Russia are having absolute breakdowns because they're like, this doesn't seem, how can they build space nukes? It shouldn't be physically possible. Once, and I keep in mind, we never developed this because it's not possible. We might one day, but we have to like have better technology than we had in the 1980s. But Russia fully believes America is getting space nukes up and they could hit Russia with nukes from space, something Russia 100% or the Soviet Union 100% could not defend against. So once Ronald Reagan creates a defense initiative, all of a sudden Russia wants to come and start talking about, hey, let's start scaling down our military. All right, let's start shutting it down. The leader of Russia at this time is a guy named Gorbachev. You see this picture here, you're like, what is on his head? Well, he has a birthmark on top of his head, so he's very noticeable. And probably when he was younger and he had a full head of hair, you wouldn't notice it. But this is Gorbachev, who is, we're going to talk about him a lot here today, is the last leader of the Soviet Union. But one of the first catalysts here is the belief in Russia they have lost the scientific edge to the United States, fully believing that we were building space nukes. And again, the actual science here behind just doesn't, it's way too complicated if this stuff even worked. But the question here is, how did Ronald Reagan's SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, what it was officially known as, how did the SDI program make Russia believe that they had lost the technological advantage over the United States? So pause me, answer that completely, and we'll move on. So let's hop over here to the Soviet Union and talk about Gorbachev. So Gorbachev is the leader of the Soviet Union, and you could probably have 10 different history teachers explain to you how the Soviet Union collapsed, because it's getting ready to. You might get 10 different versions of what the most important thing is that caused it, because it happens quickly, right? By 1991, December 25th, Christmas Day, 1991, the Soviet Union is going to officially poof dissolve. Doesn't mean like the countries themselves disappear, but Russia plus everything that they own is not going to be a thing. It's just going to be Russia as an individual country, and then all the other countries are just individual countries. And as far as the course of history and politics goes, that's like that. The reason it's so crazy is Russia was the dominant, superpower with America for 70 years, and then it just stops. So why? Well, it really comes down to a whole bunch of stuff happened at the same time that the Soviet Union there was no way they were going to recover from it. So we're going to talk about a couple policies here, a couple terms that you need to know because they'll be referenced quite a bit in Glasnost and Perestroika. Both of these are Russian terms. Glasnost is the idea of openness. Now, what is taking place is the fact that Russia's economy is trash. All right. This is, again, a better picture of Gorbachev. You can tell he has that weird ear thing on, so he's at the UN. So let's talk about their economy to start with. The great issue with communism, all right, is the fact that it doesn't, like in the true Bolshevik Soviet Union way, where everybody has to be equal, everybody makes the exact same amount of money, is it eliminates the human desire to move ahead, to work harder, to gain more, all right? Because there's no incentive to work harder. When there's no incentive to work harder, people usually work less hard. And when that happens across an entire country, production is down. That is what had gradually happened in Russia, and something that we have learned from, that the core concept of communism doesn't work with human nature, because if you take away an entire society's ability to improve, they don't work as hard if they don't have a carrot dangling in front of them. So Russia is struggling. Here's how much they're struggling. By the time Glasnost and Perestroika are concepts and terms that get put into place in Russia, the average American at the time, in the 1980s, is making $23,000 a year. That is, the average American is making $23,000 a year. The equivalent Russian at the same time is making $6,000 in buying power. I'm no mathematician, but that is, an American makes 4 times what the typical Russian does. You can't, that is extreme poverty. The entire concept of communism is supposed to eliminate poverty. There's no rich people, there's no poor people, everybody's equal in the middle. Well, the problem is when everybody becomes equally poor and there's no way to move up, you got to make changes. So, Gorbachev, probably trying to do what is best for the Russian people, knows there needs to be changes. He looks at a neighbor near him, China, also communist. Now, China has done some things differently, all right? China, while they keep a lot of the communist ideals of control and monitoring and the means of production and the command economy, in a lot of aspects, it's actually the economy part of it, that command economy, that China loosens up on. And it's one of the reasons that China is still a successful communist country today, is they allow people to make money and be wealthy in a communist society. Now, there's limits to it, but there is still an ability to move up in Chinese society. In the hardcore Soviet society, there's not. So, seeing that the Chinese economy was growing and that the Soviet Union economy was not and was going down, they try to make some changes to try to, A, be more like China and America with a little bit more of a free market, and simultaneously try to not be such jerks. Honestly, that's what Glasnost is. They realize, you know what? We need to be more open with our people. Which, let's give them credit. That's good. They're not going to cover up all this stuff. So Glasnost comes out, and it's this idea that the Soviet Union should be more open with its people. They should have access to real media stories, what's happening in the rest of the world, and really just let them have more information. Man, this is going to backfire on Gorbachev real quick. First, it's only in the 1980s, right? Once Glasnost is put into place, which is an openness, and people go start researching their own history of Russia and realize Stalin, this guy they thought was so great, had murdered 20 million Russians, 20 million of his own people. These travesties that the rest of the world had known Stalin had done, the Russian people didn't know about it because it was aggressively kept from them. Under Glasnost, they learn about this and are like, whoa, if communism's so good, why did Stalin have to kill 20 million of us for it to be good? And then, right as Glasnost is coming out, this new idea of openness, a crazy event happens in Russia called Chernobyl. So Chernobyl is a city town kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and had a nuclear reactor there that created power. It had a meltdown. Basically, a massive bomb went off in Chernobyl. All right, had a big meltdown. That wasn't so much the blast as it was the amount of radiation that leaked all to the surrounding areas, and radiation get everybody really sick and die. When Chernobyl blew up, once again, everybody needs energy. It's what we were talking about, OPEC, oil. Can we make energy out of nuclear power plants? America was doing it too. Chernobyl, they basically blew up. And a bunch of people died, and there's going to be radiation everywhere. This looks like a huge failure for Russia. So Russia's natural response when they fail at something is to deny it. Now, It's one thing to deny to America that, no, our factory never blew up. But Russia denies it to their own people. Gorbachev does. It's like, oh, we had a little issue at the factory. It's not a thing. And doesn't warn the people about the massive amount of radiation. See, they had parades in the fallout area of this killing tons of people over the next few years from Chernobyl, which was really far away. But because of Glasnost, the Russian people not only are able to find out about Chernobyl, but realize that while Gorbachev is talking about we need to be more open, he is simultaneously lying to them and telling them nothing happened here. So it is not working out well at all for Russia. Another thing that is really hurting Russia is this whole arms race that's happened with America and Russia about who has the most powerful military around. Well, Russia has decided to start a war with the Middle Eastern country of Afghanistan. It's a little poor country with rocks and mountains or whatever, and Russia invades Afghanistan in the 1970s, expecting to take it over and make it a satellite nation. Afghanistan keeps fighting, continues to fight, and Russia is never able to take over Afghanistan. They lose 15,000 troops in Afghanistan. When Glasnost comes out, everybody starts learning about how awful Afghanistan is and how can a third world country, how people viewed it at the time, stand up to Russia. Russia must be trash. So people have no more faith in the Russian military. Now, America also invaded Afghanistan and then ended up having to leave and not being able to accomplish its goals. So I don't know how much trash this is, Russia and all that, as opposed to Afghanistan really doesn't want to be taken over or controlled by anybody. Anyway, so Russia's military's worn out here, going into Afghanistan. This war hasn't worked out. Glasnost makes the Russian people not real happy with the way the Russian government is. China, has this whole new style of, opening up the market, all right, or allowing people to be rich. So Russia, with kind of a perestroika, all right, which is you're going to let people have some local elections. Communism is still going to be the name of the game. Have some local elections, but it's also supposed to allow some more free market stuff. Here's the problem. China kind of went with this early on, with this free market aspect of communism, and it worked well. In communism in Russia, by the time they switch over to trying to let some free market, the economy is complete trash. It is absolutely in the dumps. This is when nobody's making any money, and this is when people need the government to step up and help them out, but the government's like, we don't know what to do. Yeah, do it on your own. So the timing of switching over to a market economy, again, made people less confident in the government of the Soviet Union that they can actually do anything. So the question here, right, is how did Glasnost, all right, which means openness, all right, let people have more information, and perestroika, which is, having some actual elections at the local level, opening up free markets, not have the government control all the money. How did those not only change the Soviet Union economically and politically, but how did it change the way in which the Russian people viewed their own modern history? So pause me, answer that completely, and we'll move on. So the Soviet Union is going to collapse. I know that seems like a big jump from what I, just talking about these problems, all of a sudden it's just poof, gone. But that's pretty much what happens. So the Soviet Union's all these things are happening at once, all right? And not only that, so Gorbachev here, he even extends to all of America, like, hey, America, y'all want to start trading and stuff, anything to get the Russian economy back, on track. Well, when Gorbachev reaches out to America and America's not interested, which was kind of a bold move by America. Had America decided to become, you can always guess on what would have happened had America gotten involved with different relations, but America's like, no, we're good, because America saw that Russia and the Soviet Union were about to collapse, and they said, we're not giving you this life raft. We ain't bailing out anybody. So But Gorbachev had already put himself out there wanting to open up trade with America. When he does this, there's a lot of Russians who had committed to this idea for their whole life of, America's bad, Russia good, communism is the way to go. And this guy seems to be completely abandoning the entire Soviet way of doing things. They actually kidnapped this dude. And there's like a whole big thing to end up getting him back. But like the hardcore communist, he ended up kidnapping Gorbachev because they think he's betraying his own, lineage. And this is one of his political rivals, a guy here with the paper on the left side of your screen. That's Boris Yeltsin, who goes and actually negotiates the release of Gorbachev, who is released. And this is happening inside the Soviet Union. And because of Glasnost, people are seeing it. We got pictures of this. Like, they're allowing the media in to see this. And this is on TV. The government's not, hiding this stuff. And this just doesn't look good for the Soviet Union or Russia. And because they have no money and they can't keep their military up, there's a lot less military in their satellite nations. The satellite nations at this point were just basically being raised for for natural resources and being given to Russia. So they're not super fond of Russia or the Soviet Union because, again, they're not benefiting from them. That was the whole point of becoming a satellite nation. You get all these benefits of being part of this country. You're not getting those anymore. So the first country in 1989, and this was huge because the rest of the world had seen this, but nobody knew that the Soviet Union had pretty much already collapsed and nobody knew it. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, this is the same Soviet Union from just a few years ago that was like, all this other crazy stuff that were competing with America. Like, how are they letting this happen? Germany. So Germany was split in East and West Germany with the Iron Curtain. We talked about the Berlin airlift. Berlin was split in half with the Berlin Wall. The German people, East and West Germany, do not like being split in half, all right? They want to be united, and they sure don't want to go the Russian way because Germany and Russia had beef forever. So Berlin is the hot point here. There is a wall that divides East and West Berlin. East and West Berlin want to be one Berlin again, and they don't like this wall, and they don't want to be communist. And all of a sudden, one day in 1989, amid huge protest, people show up, and they start tearing down the wall in Berlin. This is worldwide TV. This is the place. Remember, America talked about this wall all the time about, Soviet Union having to build this wall to keep, communists from going to a democracy and not the other way around. So it's a protest out here. And the military doesn't show up at this protest at the wall. Then they start pulling the wall down. And the military doesn't do anything. They don't even show up. They start bringing out cranes and stuff and just start dismantling the wall. And Berlin says, we are no longer communists. We're just going to be a democracy. We're going to do what we want to. We're not going to be controlled by America. We're not going to be controlled by Soviet Union. We're going to do our own thing. Any other time in history this had happened, Soviet tanks roll in. It's absolutely atrocity. Russia denies it. Nobody hears it. Nothing happens. Germany almost instantaneously just becomes one country again. They're no longer a satellite nation. We're our own country. And Soviet Union just lets it happen. And Gorbachev agrees to it. He's like, okay, hey, the rest of you guys, I hope y'all want to stay. But if y'all don't, we understand. I think Gorbachev thought, and again, this is more the idea of the perestroika. Let them choose for themselves. If he allows them to leave, they will choose to stay. Not what happens. Immediately, every country who was basically under this completely collapsed economy of Russia and the Soviet Union, like, no, we're good, we're out. And every country that was a satellite nation breaks off and becomes their own independent country. Russia doesn't control any other country except for Russia. So on December 25th, Christmas Day, 1991, Gorbachev comes out and says, Soviet Union no longer exists. And I resign. And he quit because he wasn't in charge of anything. He was in charge of the Soviet Union, which is Russia plus the satellite nations. It's over. So the Soviet Union just poof, it's gone. Russia has to pick a new president of Russia. They have an election, and it's a guy named Boris Yeltsin, the guy that helped get Gorbachev out of that hostage negotiation. So Boris Yeltsin is going to take over a completely collapsed society, and Russia's not only going to lose in the Soviet Union, they're going to move away from communism because the people don't want it. The whole idea of communism is you're not supposed to have poor people, right? There's no super rich people, there's no poor people, everybody's in the middle. But when everybody is poor, obviously communism in the Bolshevik style that the Soviet Union was doing it, not successful, and Russia actually like becomes a democracy. It's like, oh, I guess I'm going to try this democracy thing, all right? And America just sits here and watches this happen, and America wins the Cold War and never like, oh, okay. It's like the Soviet Union just imploded. Because when there's no Soviet Union, there's nobody for America to compete with. Russia isn't strong enough without the satellite nations and the resources they have to be able to compete with American might in really any industry. So America wins the Cold War because the Soviet Union just shockingly, for all the reasons I told, like if only half of those reasons existed, it could have probably survived. But for all of that to happen at the same time, it just shuts down. And the country of Russia still exists, which is a huge country. All right, and America still has some tensions with them, but it's not the Soviet Union. So the question here is, how did the collapse of the Soviet Union lead to an end of the Cold War? So answer that completely. And that's it for the unit on the Cold War. See you guys next unit.